20 years ago, one in every 26 active pilots in the United States read an aviation blog called Nordo News. That aviation blog was mine. I wrote it. I wrote it because I had so much on my mind about aviation, from all the aspects of aviation I was involved in, that I needed somewhere to put it all down. Often these were things that other people didn't discuss, and that was usually because they were off limits. You have to realize 20 years ago, when the push for user fees really ramped up, we produced some shirts and took them to Oshkosh, and these shirts said, "User fees suck." Okay, that was it. And we were treated like heretics. I mean, it was unbelievable because we used the word suck. And also because we were essentially calling out the FAA. Now, throughout my career, I have been involved in a lot of things, and many times, people who had long histories in this industry would call me and warn me, "Oh, you can't say that," or "You can't do that." Almost every AME medical examiner that I've had for medicals in my career have told me the same thing. Now, on top of that, you have all the aviation industries that are just completely out of control with DEI garbage. And their number one focus is policing thought instead of making sure their airlines run well. Now, it isn't just the airlines. This is large charter companies, private companies, you name it. It's a mind virus that they all have. And it's made it really difficult for people to discuss things about aviation that need to be discussed, because they're all uncomfortable. The accident in Canada this past week really brought some of that to the surface. Suddenly everybody was on a side. Somebody was mad about everything or anything. People who had no idea what was going on were discussing it like experts, which always happens. Then there's the people who are virtue signaling, saying, "Oh, I'm going to wait until the official report comes out." Well, if that's the case, just keep your mouth shut. But in the middle of all that, the things that need to be done and the things that need to be said don't get done or said. So I've kind of been that fall guy for a very long time. I'm the guy who's willing to take the hit, to say the things that people don't want to say themselves, because, as I was told just 2 nights ago, you don't want to poke the bear. The problem I see is that is what has caused us all these problems. Not being able to discuss real issues and discuss them openly and honestly. And for someone like me, that drives me crazy. It's a mess. And right now, aviation and other industries that I always refer to as freedom sports, driving, riding, boating, shooting. We all have the greatest opportunity and the most potential for damage that probably most of us have had in our lifetimes. And that comes in the form of Donald Trump's administration. Ask most pilots and they will tell you this. The whole thing needs to be gutted, burnt to the ground, and started over. Sometimes things are so messed up that if you keep any of it, you've left just enough cells, cancer cells, behind for them to come back. And that's what Donald Trump appears to be doing, or his administration. That's the great opportunity we have, is to finally get some rational things done to benefit these industries and these sports. Now, the negative is Donald Trump thinks all things come from big business and CEOs. That's his Achilles heel. And aviation already has a major problem with this. Small aircraft have been run off from most airports because they'd rather deal with the more profitable people and aircraft in the business jets. And yet, it's the little guy in aviation that really makes it what it is. And this is a concept that is hard for people to understand. How does the little guy in aviation, sorry ladies, but the little guy in aviation, how does he make such a positive impact on your flight from Nashville to Raleigh-Durham? Well, here's how it is. America invented powered flight, and we invented it in the pursuit for freedom. If you go back and read the quotes of all the people really involved in trying to invent the powered aircraft, they all wanted to be free like birds. None of them said, I want to be able to go from Indianapolis to Mobile, Alabama for $35. That was never the purpose. And since that's the case in aviation, where it was invented, aviation was always based around freedom. And aviation was always accessible to the little guy. If you wanted to, you could learn to fly, own your own airplane, and go out and enjoy it. Unfortunately, that's just no longer the case. The way aviation has been treated by the people who hate freedom has really made it exponentially more expensive and more difficult to be part of. You see, the little guy would learn at a local airport, and he would learn from somebody who had been flying for 20 and 30 years. And in doing so, he would get that person's knowledge and the knowledge they'd picked up from the people before them. And they would get personalized training. And then they would fly thousands upon thousands of hours doing jobs that force you to have real skill. banner towing, bush flying, seaplane flying, charter flying, single pilot, twin engine, IFR charter. Those guys are fucking heroes, okay? You don't have that in the cockpit anymore of your airline. What you have are people who went to puppy mills. They're called 141 schools. And they didn't go because they wanted to be in aviation. If you ask a lot of these people, they went because at some point they needed something to do, and they asked themselves the question, how do I do the least amount of work for the most amount of pay? And from what they had heard, that was flying for the airlines. And the quickest way to get to the airlines was a 141 school. Now, why is that the quickest way? Ultimately, it boils down to you can get government-backed loans to go to a 141 school. So, that may ring a bell to some of you, because you've seen what government-backed loans, student loans, have done for our universities. The people coming out of there, well, I don't have to say anything about that, but we all know what it did to it. And the government did that for two reasons. The government believes in government, so they tailored the programs in a very mechanical process to work people through to get them their license. And in the process, they made them debt slaves. It's fucking disgusting. But if you're a young kid and you want a great job and you want to do this and that that's involved with the airlines, that's what you do. Then you combine that with the massive, rapid turnover the airline industry has seen over the past 10 years. Vietnam era pilots just retiring tens of thousands a year. It's just crazy. And when that happened, everybody hired at the same rate. And in just a few years' time, 70% of your workforce had been hired in the last couple of years. And that's just not long enough for the transfer of knowledge to happen. So you kind of have this convergence that is just absolutely horrible for aviation and the industry. Everything's gotten more expensive. People started learning using debt when people used to mow lawns and take jobs in the summer, and then they'd become an instructor and work for many years. Now they'll go to a 141 school, get the loan, zip right through, get some time. The better ones get some time in some of the night cargo places, and very rapidly move on. But you've lost all the great knowledge of aviation in that process. And that's just the airlines. The airlines actually make up a smaller percentage of flying in the United States than general aviation, charter, what have you, everything else combined. General aviation was aviation's it was their summer league. It was their feeder team. So people were getting real knowledge and real skill, and they also had to be dedicated to it. They had to want to do it, because they would spend 10, 15 years just building time. And by the end of those years, they were skilled, had all kinds of knowledge. But now, you have none of that. And what we have, or what we're going to have, is what I fear, is we're going to have the new administration is going to waste this opportunity and try to fix aviation from the top down when the problem is bottom up. That's the solution, bottom up. That's how we won World War II. I mean, it's overused, but it's true. It was the farm boys who could build anything with a few tools and a piece of metal. We don't have that now either because of our schools. You can't make the lower end of aviation prosperous by building up the airlines, and that's the entire focus. Well, that, and now they're hoping to take airspace from general aviation to fly drones to your house. So once again, they're putting more and more restrictions on the feeder team. You know, so somebody can get their anyway, I think you know what I'm saying. So this opportunity we have must be seized, and somebody with the right connections to get to the upper levels have to make sure that the FAA and this administration do not try to fix the problems of aviation by helping the big corporations. That's not going to do it. Building an better ATC system is not going to make us safer. You're still going to have the same pilots in the cockpit, which 20 years ago, you'd spend 6-7 years minimum. Some people would spend 15 trying to get to an airline seat. And now people are doing it in 2 or 3 years at times. If they have the resources, which very commonly it's their dad at the airline, buys them a plane, helps put them through, or they get a loan, they've got enough to get a loan, they fly every day and do it as quick as possible. And it's pretty amazing, and I'm excited for some of these people, but it's not great. And neither is hiring based on gender or skin color. But that's for another day. A friend of mine a while back said, "Man, I'm glad you're not on YouTube." But I had been looking for something to do after kind of walking away from Nordo News. So maybe I'll do this a little and look for bears. Aviation's a beautiful thing. It's not simple.